Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. You are in the right place for Acentria's 8 steps to becoming a foster parent. We are just going to give it 5 more minutes as our start time is 6 o'clock. We'll be sure to start on time, but just wanted to let you all know you are in the right place. So we will see you and talk more in about 5 minutes. All right. Hi again, everyone. Thank you for those that have joined in the last few minutes. We are going to now get started. So you are in the right place for the 8 steps to becoming a foster parent webinar presented by Acentria Foster Care here at Acentria Care Alliance. So yeah, let's get started. Thank you so much for being here. I'll introduce myself in just a moment, but first I wanted to introduce our agency. If you're not familiar with us, Acentria is a nonprofit human service agency in all the New England states but Rhode Island, and we're actually celebrating our 150th anniversary this year. So we've been around for a long time, doing a lot of different human services, ranging from services for children and families, to services for the elderly through nursing homes, to services for adults with disabilities, and immigrant services for new Americans. So we have a wide variety of programs, But tonight I'll be focusing, of course, on our foster care programs. So Essentia is a private foster care agency, but we contract with the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families or with the New Hampshire Department of Children, Youth and Families. So we contract with our local state child welfare offices to provide foster care services to a unique population, whether those are children with higher level needs in our comprehensive foster care programs, or whether that's immigrant and refugee children through our unaccompanied refugee minors program. So tonight we won't get into the weeds of the differences between those programs, but what we will talk about is if you're interested in being a foster parent, how to go about starting that journey and actually becoming licensed to provide foster care, specifically in Massachusetts. These are the steps. And they're the same steps really at any agency or even at the state level. You know, we all follow those same standards for licensing foster homes in Massachusetts. So these steps will be helpful for you to know regardless of what program you decide to foster with. All right. And now that I've introduced our agency, I wanted to just quickly mention our agenda. So we will continue to go through introductions, and then of course we'll talk about the 8 steps. We are scheduled to go till 6:30, so we'll have lots of time to really go in detail of each of the steps, and we will leave time at the end for question and answer. If you're new to this platform, you'll notice a control panel that popped up on usually the right side of your screen, and you can use that to chat with us. There is a chat feature, and that will come through to us as questions that we could answer. So feel free to send us a message in there. Otherwise, you are in listen only mode, so we cannot see or hear you this evening. But certainly, if you'd like to have further one-on-one conversations after tonight, we can do that. Okay, so let me introduce myself. My name is Colleen Schroff. I'm the Community Outreach Manager at Essentia Foster Care in Massachusetts. I've been with the agency for 4 years, and I started out with our unaccompanied refugee minors program, and now I try to serve all the programs for foster care at Essentia. And really my main role is to do this, to recruit new foster parents, to educate the community about what we're doing to serve children. And I also have my colleague here with me tonight, so I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anik Uwineza. I am a foster parent recruitment coordinator for Essentia Unaccompanied Refugee Minors program. I've been working with Essentia since March 2022, so I'm still new.
Great. Yeah, so Anik is really well poised to talk about some of these early steps to becoming a foster parent, since as our foster parent recruiter, these steps are really her role. So I'll turn it over to you, Anik, to talk about the first 4 steps.
Thank you, Colleen. So the first step is inquiry. So the inquiry is when someone expresses their interest in becoming a foster parent, either by phone, direct email, or fill out a form from our website requesting information about unaccompanied refugee minors program. Once we receive the inquiry, one of our team, the recruitment team, will contact you, explain about the program, and answer any questions that you may have. We will also complete the phone screening. During the phone screening, we ask you the questions such as if you are 25 years or older, if you have an extra room in your home for the foster kid, or if you have a stable source of income, and if you have any background record that we should know about. We encourage people to tell us about their background records, because not all background records mean that you are disqualified. We can still determine if you are eligible to move on to the next step if you let us know ahead of time. Next step Colin. The next step is application. So once we've completed the phone screening and we determine that you are eligible to apply, then we send you the application form. When we send you the application form, we also send you the consent form to sign for us to run the background check on you. We also send you a release of information form for you to sign, so we could obtain any information that will help us determine again if you are eligible. So the application form asks about your income, your references, the members of your family, their age, and the frequent visitors. Next step. The third step is background check. So during the background check, we run the Massachusetts CORI, which is criminal offender information. And we run the DCF history check, such as 51A, and we send you to do fingerprinting. Also, everyone in your home who is 15 years and older will go through the fingerprinting as well. Next slide. So once we've completed all those steps, then the next step is training. So during training, you will go through a state mandated training called Massachusetts Approach to Partnership in Parenting, MAP. MAP highlights many profiles of children in foster care system. It also highlights key topics such as communication techniques, trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, sexual orientation, discipline, and mental health. During the training, the training also is online. Since COVID, everything is almost online. It is 30 hours and it lasts about 6 weeks, and you will be taking 3-hour training, 3-hour classes. Thank you, Colin. You can continue with the remaining slides.
Great. Thank you, Anik. And yeah, thanks, Anik, for mentioning that this is now online. I think it's important to highlight actually that much of our process to become licensed ever since the pandemic has gone virtual and has gone online, which is nice. We can accept your application through an online link so that you're not having to print out a bunch of paperwork or mail it necessarily, although you can if you choose to. And yeah, the training is virtual, so it's still a live training, but it does allow you to do it from home and not have to, drive in the snow or things like that. So a lot of the process has gone virtual, and a lot of people are really excited about this step, the training. And I know a lot of foster parents that become licensed, they look back at their training throughout their career as a foster parent and find it really valuable, that training. And step 5 is the home study. So I would really say this is one of the most significant steps of the licensing process. So I mentioned a lot is online. This is the part where some in-person stuff comes into play. So this is actually where a social worker will visit your home. And they do a first visit that's checking for the physical safety of your home, that you do have that available bedroom that Anik mentioned. A big thing is fire safety. So we look at the smoke detectors in your home. Nothing too crazy. It's all very common sense, basic safety stuff. Seeing if you have a fire extinguisher, making sure that the home isn't very cluttered or have obvious hazards, but that's not to say it needs to be perfectly neat and tidy by any means. So that's really the first visit, is just the basic physical safety. And that happens in person so that we can get familiar with your home. The remaining visits, they can actually happen virtually because these visits aren't so much about the physical safety of the home. They're actually more emotional and getting to know you as a person. So they're really a series of interviews where a social worker from Essentia or from whatever program you're working with would interview you and ask you a series of required questions. So these are questions we have to ask in Massachusetts. But they're things that help us understand your family, understand your upbringing, understand if you are a parent, what is your parenting style currently? If you have children, you know, how do you envision your children adjusting to a new child coming into the home? Or if you're not a parent, how do you envision your parenting style? How were you raised? Do you plan to, you know, use the same parenting style as your own parents, or is it very different? And what are the reasons for that? So it is very in-depth, and I think it's important to know that some people who are very private, they might find it a little intrusive, to be honest, but the goal is to get to know you. And the reason for that is that you're developing a relationship with your social worker, because here at Essentia, that person who does your home study, they usually continue to support the home once you're licensed. So that's developing a connection where they know you really well and they know your strengths. And they also know areas where you need support, which we all need support. And I think it also allows us to make the best match possible of a child to your home. We do match very purposefully at Essentia. We are able to put a lot of thought before placing a child, which we'll talk more in one of the later steps, but the home study serves that. So I think this part is really important. It's at least 4 visits to your home, some of which are in person and some of which are virtual. And this is really the part that can take the longest, especially if your schedule is pretty hectic. You know, they need to come out and do 90-minute interviews with you a few times. So if you need to break that into smaller chunks over several weeks, of course, that can extend how long it takes to get things done. But I think after this part, it's also an opportunity to have conversations one-on-one to continue to prepare you outside of even the classes, but to now apply what you've learned to the classes and think about those things in your home with your family and your family members. So a really important step 5. And the final step is licensing. So I know we said there's 8 steps, but the first 6 are what actually makes you a foster parent. So this is after the home study, or even during the home study, paperwork is being gathered from you. If you have pets in your home, we need pet vaccination records, for example, to ensure that your dog or cat is up to date on their rabies vaccine. If you have a turtle or a bird, I'm less clear. We do have parents with more unique pets. And then there are references that are collected during the end of the home study. So we speak to personal references that know your family. We do speak to your employer to make sure that they're aware that you're planning to foster, as it will impact your day-to-day life. And because we can then confirm that you have the stable income. We also speak to a medical reference for everyone in the home to make sure that everyone is healthy, both mentally and physically, to be providing care to a child. So those are references that are collected. And there's, of course, other things that are, you know, little nitty-gritty stuff. And that's not your responsibility to know or figure out. The social worker really walks with you through this whole process and lets you know what they need. So at this stage, there's a lot happening behind the scenes too, where all the interviews you've done, they're compiling notes through, you know, into the home study. So there's behind the scenes stuff happening here to make sure we're following the state's guidelines and doing everything that we need to do to officially license you. And at this point in the process, I know a common question is, How long does this all take? So from when we get your application to here, it's about 6 to 8 months. We really strive for 6 months. That is our goal. But sometimes things get in the way. Maybe you have a family emergency and you need to deal with that. Maybe, unforeseen things happen. So it can take longer. We definitely ask for your patience, but we'll do our best to communicate with you where you're at in the process and keep you informed. And I think the biggest factor in that is you and, being on top of the paperwork that we're asking for and, doing what's asked of you, because that helps us keep the process moving along. All right, and once you are licensed, pretty much immediately, we begin to look at matching a child with your family. I haven't said it yet, which is shocking. I should have led with this, but I am so appreciative of all of you that are here listening tonight. I know we all have busy lives and hectic schedules, and it's so valuable that you're here and that you care enough to listen and learn about the foster care system. Whether you become a foster parent after this or not, just learning about foster care helps kids in foster care. And unfortunately, in our state right now in Massachusetts, we are in what is considered a placement crisis. So there are not enough foster homes. First and foremost, there's not even enough group homes because of staffing issues to take care of the children in foster care in our state. So the situation really is dire. In Massachusetts, there's approximately 10,000 children in foster care. And it's actually National Adoption Month this month in November. And there's at least 1,400 kids in Massachusetts that are legally freed for adoption. So I'd shout that out because it is Adoption Awareness Month. But even so, regardless of their adoptive status, 10,000 children, that's thousands of children in care. And we simply do not have enough foster homes to care for them. Whether it's our agency, whether it's at the state level, we are all struggling. So I thank you for listening because, spreading this information is really needed right now. And even more needed is for adults to step up and to say, we care about these kids and we want to help. And so the matching process is quick because there is such an urgent need. So we've gotten to know you really well through that home study. So we have a very clear picture of the type of child that's a fit for the family, the age that will work, the gender that will work, maybe the religious background would be considered, the personality could be considered. We do try to take into consideration the full picture of the child. And we do give you in advance all of the information we have about a child. That is called a referral. Sometimes we have more information than others. If it's an emergency, we might have less information than if they've been in care and are looking for a new placement for some reason, we might have a little bit more. But whatever we have about their needs and that youth, we will share that with you. And then you can go on to make an informed decision of if that child is a fit for your family. They're never going to be a perfect match, but if you have a legitimate concern as to why you don't feel you can support that child's needs, you do have that authority to say no, because you know your family best at the end of the day, so we will respect your decision. We think that's important for people to know. And at a private agency, we do have that luxury of really being thoughtful about the matching process. Sometimes at the state level, it's much more emergent and urgent, but as a private agency, we still run into emergencies, but not quite as often. So that matching process is very thoughtful, and you have the ability to ask questions about any children's referral information that you receive. So that is the matching. If you say yes and you agree to have the child placed in your home, that is so exciting. And then we move forward with the placement. And really, this final step is more of just the beginning of the journey, having that child placed into your home. And I hope one thing you take away from today is that you are not in this alone. And once the child is placed at our agency, they have a social worker for the child and a social worker for the family. So you're both on both sides being supported by a team of professionals who have been doing this for 150 years, right? So there is a lot of shared knowledge. And there's also other foster parents that you can lean on for support. At Accentria, we are proud to have monthly support groups where our foster parents can get together, more so virtually nowadays, but to lean on each other. Some foster parents, I've been doing this only for 4. Foster parents out there have been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. So they have so much knowledge that they can share. And chances are they've been through a challenging situation that you might run into. So that shared knowledge and that sense of community amongst our foster families is something we really try to foster. So if you are at the intensive foster care program, you would have a weekly visit with someone who's checking and supporting on you and the youth. And if you're at the unaccompanied refugee minors program, it's a monthly visit from 2 different people. So there's a lot of support built into this. We also have a 24/7 emergency on call. So if it's Saturday at 2 a.m. and there's an urgent concern, there's somebody for you to call at all times. So you're literally never in this alone. And, you know, unlike in biological parenting, you have that baby, they send you home, they say, good luck, we'll see you in a month for the checkup, right? It's such a different experience because there is this built-in team of professionals that is there to help you. So if that's one thing you take away, especially about the final step of being a foster parent, that placement, it's that there's a lot of support. And even in the earlier steps, there's a lot of support. Anik is here to help you with your application, for example. If you're overwhelmed by the paperwork and you don't know where to start, you can set up a meeting either in person or online for help with filling out your application. So at every single step, we want to be there to support you. So that is the final step, and our last slide is just a review of the 8 steps. So we talked about the inquiry where you first contact us, the application, filling out paperwork, the background check to ensure that you have a criminal history that is free from violence or abusing children, the training, that's 30 hours required in Massachusetts, the home study, that's those visits with the social worker, really getting to know your family, and then the licensing, which is the last bits of paperwork and some behind the scenes stuff before ultimately the ultimate goal of matching your family with a child and placing that child into your home. So we have about 7 minutes left, and I would love to open it up to any questions that you all have. This is a quick 30-minute webinar, but we do have time for questions. So hopefully you learned something new tonight. But if you go into your control panel and you look for the chat, the question feature, you can send a question in and we will be happy to answer it. So I'll just give a minute and see if any questions come in. And even if it's a question sort of outside what we've covered tonight, I know some of you might be very new into considering foster care and learning about foster care, so really any questions are welcomed. But I don't see any coming through yet, which is totally fine. Hopefully that means we've done a good job of covering these steps. Okay. So still feel free to send in a question, and if I see any come in, I'll certainly answer, but I'm going to wrap up. So again, I want to thank you all for being here. It's especially appropriate that you're here during National Adoption Awareness Month. And the purpose of National Adoption Month is to raise awareness for adoption through foster care. So I think we've achieved that tonight. And while not all children in foster care end up being adopted, when we talk about foster care, I think it's always important to talk about adoption as well. So thank you all for being here during such an important awareness month. And beyond that, we're always raising awareness. We're doing these webinars monthly for the rest of the winter. So our next webinar is actually in about a month on Wednesday, December 14th at 7 p.m. We will actually be doing a question and answer or Q&A session with one of our own experienced foster parents. So if you're leaving here tonight, not really sure like what's next and kind of knowing that you're not quite ready for the next first step, then a great thing to do would be to come to that next webinar and actually hear from one of our real foster parents who can speak to the real experience. And we do have our first question with that being said. So Jasmine, hi Jasmine, had asked, how long does a kid typically stay in the home? So that's a great question, and that really depends on the type of foster care that you're interested in providing. So I will give it a couple of scenarios. So the first would be if you're comparing it to traditional foster care at the state, foster care is meant to be a temporary short-term place for the child to go while their biological family gets back on their feet, or works towards goals to have their children reunified with them. So that's the ultimate goal of all foster care, is to reunify children with their parents. The state does not want to have that reputation of taking children from their parents. It is a last resort, and the ultimate goal is to help families and provide services to families that will help them stabilize. So in that scenario, foster care might be 90 days, might be 6 months, maybe up to a year, while the birth parent, or another relative is working towards goals to reunify with that child. There are, of course, times where that is not possible. So in the case of our programs, specifically here at Accentria, in our intensive foster care program and at our unaccompanied refugee minors program, it tends to be much longer term. And there's reasons for that. With intensive foster care, children are coming into care from the state because they have additional needs than the typical foster child. And our program specializes in providing the extra supports needed so that the child with more needs can still be successful in the family setting. So that's what we do, because I think we all agree the best place for a child is in a home setting, not in a group home and not in a residential, more clinical environment. So our program really tries to do that. So at IFC, kids usually have more needs that they need to stabilize before they can move on to their goal. If that goal is reunification, or if their goal is adoption, that could be the case. If, after usually about a year, if their relative hasn't successfully achieved their goals, they will start considering adoption. So that could look more like at least a year, but even up to 2 or 3 or 4 or more years. So it is much longer term. With the unaccompanied refugee minors program, the children are here unaccompanied. They don't have relatives in the United States. So reunification is not an option, or it has been exhausted. Like that's just not possible in most cases for those kiddos. So they are usually in care for an average of 3 to 6 years at the unaccompanied refugee minors program. So it really varies. It depends on the child and it depends on the child's goals. So great question. And I see another question is, so a family visit happens in that case, how often would the child see their family? Excellent question. So for children from Massachusetts, it completely depends on the situation. If they do have the goal of reunification, they are having family visits. Those could be monthly, they could be weekly, maybe if the child's approaching closer to their reunification, it might be more often. Some visits will be supervised. Most often they're supervised, and that happens at a DCF office with the social worker supervising the visit between the relative and the child. Or if again, they're approaching reunification and that's coming up, it might be an unsupervised visit as they approach that reunification. So it really depends, but it's absolutely important to know that as a foster parent, part of your responsibility is to make sure that they are communicating with their birth family. For our immigrant youth, maybe their birth family is outside of the country, but they still have relatives that they're in touch with over the phone or on social media. So that definitely is a part of foster care, is keeping in touch with the birth family when it's appropriate, when it's safe, and when it's in the best interest of the child, which is in a lot of cases because, you know, children are forever connected to their birth relatives. Okay, so we are at our time, 6:30 on the dot. So I thank you so much for your questions, for your attention and your interest. After tonight, in the next hour, we will be emailing you with the recording of tonight's webinar. We would love for you to share it with people in your networks who might be interested to learn as well. And it will also have information for you of how to take the next step if you do want to start with that first inquiry. Or if you're not really sure what to do next, we have some suggestions too, such as coming to our next webinar on December 14th. But thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to close us out for the evening. So have a great night and happy holidays if I don't talk to you before then.